Yeah, welcome back to the Weekend Journal. Yours truly, Jack O'Malley here with you. Having fun. I'll tell you what, this show's only an hour, but it takes a little bit of work to put together every week to stay on top of things. I try to read articles and follow up and talk to people about just about everything that's happening. And, you know, some weeks I succeed probably better than others, but I want you to know the effort is there to always provide you with, my thoughts on things. I try to be, Ken even said during the break there, he said, hey, I appreciate you, kind of sticking up for the DNR here and there because it needs to be done. And that's the way I try to look at it. There are two sides to everything, and the DNR does a lot of good work. As I mentioned, there are some folks out there who they've had some run-ins with because of, deer hunting or whatever the case may be. It happens, and it's unfortunate. But overall, we want good, good care for our natural resources, and we want to make sure they have the right amount of money to do it. And but again, there's the question: where do they get it from? How much? Et cetera, et cetera. The other thing I thought I'd mention real quick too about that conversation, it's been around, it's popped up a lot this term, and that's the earmarks, the pork. The House Republicans have introduced legislation that would mirror their House rules for this year, and that is, if you want to have request an earmark for the appropriations committees, you need to fill out the form. Jack O'Malley needs, X amount of dollars for such a purpose, and it will help my community in such a way. And ultimately that's one of the things that pork necessarily, earmarks aren't bad things. If there's some extra money and you can use it to help your community, that's good. Earmarks got a bad, and pork got a bad reputation from Washington, especially. The bridge to nowhere. Oh, they're just wasting. They're just scratching the backs of people they know. Unfortunately, that did happen. That's why I think a couple things. One, the legislature now, the House saying, hey, everybody's got to know. And when we take a look at this, when we post that says this got done, they're going to know that Jack O'Malley is the one who requested it and why, right? I think that makes a ton of sense. The other thing that I think gets overlooked, and it's just, they're all a bunch of dirty bums. Term limits. Michigan had the tightest, most restrictive term limits. 3 2-year terms for the representatives and 2 4-year terms for senators, especially in the House, because not everybody in the House goes on to the Senate, right? There's much fewer seats in the Senate. You're there for 6 years. You got to get it done, baby. And if there's a project in your community and that sort of thing, and plus, when you are having such a turnover, it's really hard to keep track of what's going on. And so if there was some skullduggery in the appropriations realm of things, it was hard to track because, I'm the fresh-faced appropriations chair who just got elected. And how did this all work? Where did you get this from? That's the point. So, term limits are not, just because of term limits, throw the bums out. It's short-sighted and it's foolish. So I'm glad. I think our term limits should be even a little bit longer than they are, but the current term limits is way better than they were. All right. Let's get to the Lansing stories for the day and the week. Now, this one is going to be around a while. We talked about it before the holiday, and it's still around. That is this Faye Bedouin, who put together this group that was supposed to help bring and incubate businesses from other countries to come to Michigan. She was supposed to get a competitive grant of $20 million. Well, then somewhere along, and I'm paraphrasing all of this, there's a great article by Craig Mager and Beth LeBlanc in the Detroit News. You can go read all about it there. They're the ones who broke this story. So I'm not going to give you every detail. You can get that in the Detroit News with those two fine reporters. But basically, she's supposed to get a $20 million competitive grant. And then somewhere along the line, as the appropriations bills are going through, it becomes a $20 million earmark. Now, what happens is it turns out that Faye Bedwan was also like on the board of directors, or a very influential board at MEDC while all of this was happening. That is not good. She was also a big donor to the governor, like $13,000, and she held a fundraiser for her and all that kind of stuff. So that doesn't look good either. The MEDC executive committee, while she was on it, again, they said that was probably a conflict of interest. She raises money, but then somewhere along the line, Faye Bedwan offered to transfer $5 million to the Michigan Economic Development Fund. She said that in April after all of this has blown up, as a show of good faith in response to the state's cancellation of her $20 million grant. Now, remember, she's the one who went and bought a $4,500 coffee maker and paid for a first-class airfare and expensive salaries for this little staff to this nonprofit. Anyway, she never sent the money. The Economic Development Corporation never received the $5 million that she was going to send as a sign of good faith. This one has an odor to it. And I will give Dana Nessel, our Attorney General, who I don't think has been the greatest Attorney General, she is on this, but thanks to the Detroit News reporting that exposed it. So let's find out if somebody's guilty, if the governor took a kickback. I don't know if she did. Please, I'm not saying she did. But until we get facts on this, until we get things straightened out, this is something to keep an eye on. So I will continue to do that. Sticking with the legislature for just a minute. Bridge Magazine. Bridge Michigan is what they call themselves now. They did a little stat checking, and so far in this term, since January, 6 bills, 6, have passed through the House and the Senate onto the governor for signature. That is the smallest amount of bills since 2007. Now, some believe that when the legislature isn't passing bills, they're doing their best work. But Speaker Hall says lawmakers should not measure themselves on how many public acts they get, which there is truth to that. But the Senate Majority Leader, Winnie Brinks of Grand Rapids, says that's just an excuse, and that's why they missed the deadline of July 1st. We're going to talk more about the deadline and whatnot in just a moment. But she says the ongoing painful budget negotiations are a good illustration of why it has been so challenging to get bills to the governor's desk. So in February, it was a 2-bill package, the minimum wage and the sick time, if you remember that. In May, 2 bills that extended the financial disclosure of our legislature because the Secretary of State's boondoggle website of $9 million isn't working. Still isn't, to the best of my knowledge. Also, a couple of bills in June, or a bill allowing 15 days grace for the areas that were hit by the storm. And let's see here. And also the one in June that allowed Michigan Department of Corrections to transfer ownership of the Detroit Detention Center. So that's it. The blame game is on. So with that, I find some things interesting here. Well, why isn't anything getting done? I've noticed that the Senate just seems to be, and this might be an unfair pick, but I'm going to say they've been sitting kind of in neutral, or sitting there in park with the engine running, lights are off, engine's running, radio's on. That's the Senate sitting there, They're like, yeah, we can go if we need to. Well, guess who? And we've said, where's the governor in all of this? Well, it appears, I'm hearing through the vine of grapes that the governor and the House are actually fairly close and aligned. Think about this. Governor Whitmer, what did she say 6 years ago when she ran? Going to fix the darn roads. Well, they ain't been fixed. And some of that is because of her, but they ain't been fixed. And she is about to end her terms here, right, in a couple of years. Does she, if whatever she does she want to go out having blown the opportunity to get the roads fixed, right? I mean, first and foremost, that's an ego thing. Second, if she wants to run for president or something, and she has to say, yes, and I can do this and do that, but I didn't get my signature effort done. What does that say? So she really wants to get this done. That's what I'm hearing. So she's working with the House, and she's working against the Senate. Follow me here. In 2022, this is being reported out there, popped up. In 2022, America Works USA received $11.2 million from Michigan Governor Gretchen Whitmer's leadership PAC. This single grant was more than 10 times larger than America Works USA total revenues of $1,997,000. Whitmer was criticized by campaign finance regulators about this donation, but, things rolled on. Who is funding efforts now to get people to call and push the Michigan Senate? America Works, which is basically funded by Governor Gretchen Whitmer. Okay? So they are sending out notices to people saying it's time to invest in local roads and comprehensive funding. Failure to act means thousands of jobs lost, skyrocketing vehicle repair costs, and even higher expenses for infrastructure repair down the line. Call your senator and ask them to get the job done on fixing roads today. And that's not call your legislator, it's call your senator. So a group that was wholly funded by Governor Whitmer donations of $11 million is now sending notes out to people saying, call your Michigan State Senator. So Governor Whitmer appears to, by way of another group, pushing the Senate to get off the stick. Interesting, I think. So that might explain what's going on here. Governor Whitmer, not a real fan of the Michigan State Senate. Maybe that's why I've heard some grumblings from the senators. We don't know where she is. She doesn't come and talk to us. Maybe that's why. All right, sticking with the roads for just a minute. County roads, we've had them on the show a month or so ago, right? Roads in counties across Michigan had 6,571 miles improved in last year, an increase of less than 1%. Their goal is always to improve 15% or 90,000 miles, right? In their 90,000-mile road work, which would be 13,500 miles, pardon me. 15% is 13,500. But they're not there. And the Denise Donahue, who is the head of the county roads, said that these short-term fixes aren't working in 25 following years of double-digit road construction, inflation, and revenue models increasing, impacted by more fuel-efficient cars, et cetera, things aren't working. County road agencies cannot stretch existing dollars any further. We need more transportation funds in this legislative session, along with prompt adoption of a mileage-based pilot program for the future. That, according to Ed Niola, who was on this show a few months ago. I, again, think we need to get more money to our roads, and it's not a hard fix. It is some hard decisions. Does that make sense? Especially when I believe the Senate is more focused, and this isn't a knock per se, but they're more focused right now on some of the social things like schools and their backers, the MEA. The roads really have no supporters, nobody, in that same category, and we need to get our roads fixed. And now is the time. And we do need, as Ed Niola said, we need to have a good pilot program to answer questions about vehicle miles traveled. Take it away from the pump, take it away from registration fees, do all of that. Vehicle miles traveled. They don't care that you went to the liquor store, then the casino. They don't. They just want to know that from the liquor store to the casino was 4 miles. You see what I'm saying? Anyway, and I did a very rude calculation a few years back. I took my mileage for the year, which was considerable, over 30,000 miles, and I figured in it, an average gas tax. And I believe when I figured it out, and again, I am not a mathlete, so I could have been off by a few, but it was about $900 would have been my yearly tax for roads. And it's not a terrible amount of money, and if you pay it quarterly or however. So I think it can be done. We just have to be able to have the guts to talk about it. All right, here's one that I do kind of shake my head. There is a bill up through the Senate, or no, pardon me, House, Kerry Reagan's, Democrat in Ann Arbor, that would allow college athletes to unionize. College student athletes treat them as employees of the universities, public universities in Michigan, which would allow them to form a union for collective bargaining. She says this is a billion-dollar industry, and this bill simply gives them a voice in shaping, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. All right, here's what I say. We're in a screwed situation because college sports have allowed themselves to kind of swirl down into the pits of disgustingness. Think about this. There was a time when you cheered for the University of Michigan or the Spartans because they were amateur athletics, but that isn't the case anymore. Well, I'll tell you what. Why Major League Baseball and NHL hockey have minor league systems. You as an athlete can choose to go and go to school at MSU or U of M or Boise State or wherever. Or you can choose to go into and take your shot in a minor league situation somewhere. Not for football or basketball. Those industries are smart. They said, let's let the colleges be our minor leagues and we don't have to pay a dime. So I say at colleges, universities, guys who love college, guys who just love the game, or girls, I use guys in the big frame, let them go play. If so-and-so, who might be as dumb as a box of rocks and doesn't want to try and get into a college, but can go play football or basketball because he or she is a gift, physically a gift from God, why not let them? So this whole thing, NIL and unionizing and paying athletes, I think is terrible. In the old days, you played for Stedgy Prep because you liked the school and you got an education. That was your payment. Not anymore. Not when ESPN and every pay-per-view is paying millions and millions of dollars. All right, there, get off my soapbox. Here's another sad one. Michigan foster children are being forced to sleep in office lobbies, shelters, according to court reports. More than 100 Michigan children per year are taken away from families for abuse and neglect, to have to spend nights sleeping in short-term shelters or even in State Department lobbies when the state cannot find suitable foster homes for them. Now, this is a problem that was addressed in the courts many years ago, and Michigan has yet to make it happen. You know, it's one of the things that I say, I'll just be honest. It's the way this show is. And then we'll take a break. The whole abortion issue, I'm a pro-life guy. I want every baby to be born, but I can't tell you what to do, right? And I support the people who want to protect children, but at birth, I do. But I also say, let's not forget the 13,000 kids that are in foster care. Let's not forget the kids that are already here. And I will tell you that Michigan is not like 100% failing, but Michigan is 65 to 70% failing in so many ways to help our children that are in need. And so I say, when you want to help kids, you want to save lives, think about those kids. And we need to get these kids in proper homes and get them away from these abusive things and not have them sleeping in lobbies of state buildings and so on and so forth. All right, with that, we're going to take a break and come back. Do we have Music Maestro? Yes, we do. All right, the Weekend Journal on News Talk 580 WTC, and we got a big one. We're going to talk the ballot proposals coming up. Stay tuned. News Talk 580 WTCM. All right, we are back. The Weekend Journal here on News Talk 580 WTCM. We got short time, so I want to get right to it here. One of the things I think that's important is you're going to see people, if you haven't been already approached, by people with petitions and ballots wanting to get signatures to get things on the ballot. One of the things I say that I think has really hurt the state of Michigan over the last few years are these ballot proposals that are not well thought out and not totally vetted. The group that wants them puts it through. But is it really what's good? But when you get the quick read of, I want to smoke marijuana, you vote for it. Oh, yeah, I want elections to do this, and you vote for it. Have you read the whole thing? What I say is, if these ballot proposals get to the ballot, make sure that you are looking at them. Or even right now, going to go through them here real quick. Rank Michigan Vote. There's only one state in the union that uses ranked voting, and that is Maine. There are several communities in the state of Michigan that use ranked voting, but only for local. This is where you take the top two runoff. It's just not good, in my opinion. Invest in Michigan Kids. This is the one that wants to raise taxes on people who make more than $500,000 a year, or couples more than $1 million. There's some other things in the bill or in the legislation that I think are just not good. And so, read the bills, read the proposals. Voters to stop pay cuts. These are basically a redo of the minimum wage that was discussed and worked through with the legislature earlier in the term, if you remember. That one's out there. Axe My Tax. They want to eliminate all property taxes. In theory, I'm for that. But you have to find ways to raise the income otherwise. The states that do it, Tennessee, Florida, they don't have an income or a property tax, whatever it is, but they get those taxes in other ways. This proposal, I don't think, handles it. Again, it might not make the ballot. It might, but read the proposal before you, I want to get rid of my property taxes. Well, what havoc may it cost down the road in other ways? Read the proposals. Committee to Protect Voters' Rights. These are the ones who say you have to be a U.S. citizen. I had them on my show earlier when this all came up. I'm kind of for that one. But again, read it. You may or may not like it. So those are the proposals that are floating around out there, and you should definitely take a look at them. We need to be, part of being an American is taking part in the process. And you're busy. You can't do it every day. That's why we elect people to go and represent us. But you still do need to pay attention. I was with a group of people the other day, and we were talking about how many people don't flip the ballot over. Flipping the ballot over, that's where the nonpartisan things are. That's where local election type stuff can be, ballot proposals and things or proposals. But we don't flip the ballot over because we vote for president, we vote for this, we vote for that. Last term, last election, I've used this before, and I'm rounding my numbers. 5 million people voted. Half the population in the state votes on election day, and only 2 million of them vote for Supreme Court justice. Where'd the other 3 million go? Well, that's not important. You're nuts? Supreme Court, they're the final arbiter, right? They're the zebras in the striped shirts on the ball field. So pay attention. Find the website. Do a little research on all these and the other ballot proposals that might actually make it. I think that it is something that we have to do. All right? Okay, rolling along. The Weekend Journal every Saturday. It comes your way then later in the day, especially if I don't screw up something in editing. We'll have it on Facebook and on YouTube because not everybody can be listening. And I forgot the Journal, and I better listen. So you can go to YouTube. It's all under Jack O'Malley's Weekend Journal, so it should work for you. All right? All right, well, my goodness, we are basically halfway through July already. Hope you're having a good one, right? The Weekend Journal on News Talk 580 WTCM, Traverse City, Michigan. I'm Jack O'Malley. Thank you so much for listening in this week. And we'll talk to you again next week.